So after Matthias presented our knowledge graph in the first talk, I'm going to give you an idea of what is a more critical reflection on what did we achieve and maybe also where we failed or where we just had some problems to achieve the goals that we had. So as we already told you, we have got this kind of mission of connecting different data silos, but on the collaborational level, we also had different further missions and aims in Windhager, one of them being connecting different DH teams and building a task force for this kind of project, but also connecting two cultural heritage institutions and see what our potential users would need to get something out of the data and of the knowledge graph that we created. So for the first part, connecting data silos, I want to take a more deeper look at the knowledge graph that Matthias presented already. And he told you already how we created the knowledge graph and some of the biases that we have in there. But I want to look at the different kinds of entities that we have in this knowledge graph and the problems that come with them. So first, we have got several cultural actors in our knowledge graph. And as Matthias already said, we have got several of them well connected in here and in here. But there are also on the outskirts several of them who have no connection. And why is that the case? So the problem is that these biographies are biographical texts. And in building the knowledge graph and also in developing visualization, we rely on structured data. So we have to get from the biographical text to the structured data. And how can we do that? One option is to annotate the entities in the text by hand. That is something that was done, for example, for the APIS data. That is something that we are currently doing with parts of the Slovenian data, so that we have got richer data that also include this kind of structured entities. Another option that we have got in our project is using NLP pipelines, and Angel is here, for example. If you're interested in how we use NLP, please ask him in the break. He will be able to tell you more about it. Another approach that we did is that we use search sources. So, for example, thinking about Wikipedia and how we can use structured information from Wikidata to enrich our knowledge graph, how we could also use other sources like correspondence networks, newspaper articles to build up connections and further for the events in the data. We also explored with AI tools to identify relations between actors, to identify events. Also, that's something Angel can tell you maybe something about if you're more interested in that. And also one option could be to add further biographical databases, which are more closely related. As we did see in the examples, the Austrian and the Slovenian database, they are regionally close and they are also more closely related to one another. And so it could be interesting, for example, if you have got the Netherlands data and include Belgium data, whether there are more relations that could be found between those databases than we currently have in those more geographically spread data that we have. If you look at cultural heritage objects, you see there is a huge imbalance in the number of objects that we have got from Wikidata and Europeana. And as we said, the problem that we have is we need this kind of structured relations and structured data. And that's something that's was challenging for us to find in Europeana. So Europeana has a rich data model, but often this data model is not filled and we do not have this kind of structured person data where we can link our person data to. So in the end, we are still working on finding further data, on enriching it further. We are in exchange also with Europeana on that problem because we are sure there should be more data in Europeana than in Wikidata. That's something we are quite sure, and yeah. What is also a problem that we have here currently, we only looked at creation events. So we have no idea currently if there are people who maybe were the owners of an object or who exhibited an object in some place or something like that. So there could be different kinds of relations to these objects that we don't have yet in the data, and one should think about what kind of relations could be included in such a database also. So currently we are a bit restricted there as well. And it would also maybe be interesting, we have got this kind of NLP tools, AI tools for the biographical data. Why don't we use these data also on the descriptions of the cultural heritage objects, so that we have got a text there and generate automatically these kind of named entities from them. We have got places, and it's very interesting that these places are huge hubs in our knowledge graph. So there are people that were born in Vienna, several of them, but is this a relation? Is this meaningful? So that's also something which is critical when you think about these kind of entities. It makes sense if both of them have been born in the same region of Styria, in a small town. That is a meaningful relation if it was at a similar time. But a place like Vienna is not a meaningful relation. So we have to think about what kind of relations about other entities could be meaningful. This could be exhibitions for artists, for example. This could be organizations. So we have to think about what kind of links between actors and objects via other entities could be also meaningful to build up such a knowledge graph. So that's a bit more a critical view on what we did in connecting this kind of data silos. I also want to have this kind of view on what was done in our team, how did we change there. And there was a huge development in terms of collaboration from the beginning of the team of the project as we started with Corona. And yeah, this kind of work situation is a different one, as most of you will know by the time. But it was very interesting to see how we started with a really virtual kickoff from hybrid settings to really a close collaboration in person as well. So the consortium is made up of these different institutions, and if you look at the different emphasis that the institutions have, you can see there are different aspects and different expertise that they bring in. So for example, we have got this aspect on cultural heritage and art history. So we have got historians and art historians in our consortium that bring in their expertise as a humanist. We have got these biographical databases for sure, but we also have people who link the data, build up the knowledge graph. We have this natural language processing and the AI to really process the data. And on the front-end design, we also think about UI design, about storytelling and visualization. So you can see there are very different perspectives that come together, and it's challenging also to bring these different perspectives together, but it's also worth doing this kind of collaboration, I think. So I just started to reflect what did facilitate the collaboration across such a very heterogeneous consortium. And I think what is really important is this kind of regular meetings, and actually it's more the in-person meeting than the virtual ones, because I think there, especially in the breaks, the collaboration, the discussion, that's really important to gain a similar understanding of the topics. We also had workshops, hackathons. We had a workshop at the last DH conference on biographical data in the digital world, also to the outside communication. For the front end, there were several coding weeks where all the developers met and just hacked 1 week, and really there were very high progress in such weeks also. And also this kind of shared outcome always brought together a huge development in very short time. What did impede collaboration? Looking on the other side, I think the COVID-19 crisis, we were really missing this kind of in-person meeting at the beginning of the project. We had different expectations on the projects, and I think they still are there. When I heard Matthias talk in the beginning and say our main goal was integrating different biographical databases, we had several main goals. One of them was that, but we also wanted to do. So it's still this kind of, everyone brings in his own expectations, and yeah, that's very difficult to get that together. There are some responsibilities in tasks that were not shared by different people, and that always is this kind of critical problem if there's no one to take over, if there's some delay, for example. And we have got very different understandings of similar concepts in different disciplines. That's also a problem that we faced. From my perspective as a coordinator, there are some important roles in the team. So we have got the coordinators of the work package, which are really important. But also these kind of naive outsiders, and I'm one of them. I'm neither a humanist nor a computer scientist, so I'm just asking these kind of silly questions, which often bring about that there's some aspect no one thought about. Then there are the bad guys who try to track progress and always stay next deadline. But I also think it's important to have these kind of translators, people that bridge the different communities and that know about both communities and somehow can tell you how you can move in both communities and talk to people in both of them. And that's why I wanted also to highlight that we have got people here from the Wiz for the Age community, which is this kind of attempt to bridge visualization and digital humanities. And you have got workshops at the IEEE Wiz conference, as well as here at the Age conference from the same group of people, so that you really could get this kind of bridging and translation of the same endeavor from one to the other. And as the last aspect, connecting to cultural heritage institutions, we wanted to get out to the people, have this user-centered design approach. We had innovation workshops at the beginning of the project. We also said already that it was one of the outcomes where we had this idea of what users could do with their, with the knowledge that we build, and what kind of user practices they could have based on our aims that we have got here. We had got several cycles where we had workshops within our consortium, but also with people from research institutions, from cultural heritage institutions, where they tried out our interfaces and gave us feedback on what worked, what didn't work, but also very critical instances on what were problems with this kind of interfaces. So if we had one more year, we could integrate further databases in our knowledge graph and reach out to other databases. We could conduct case studies in museums and work with curators and museum education specialists. We could develop visualization-based stories that are out there in museums, like the one we are here today. And we could also develop our prototype into a fully functional prototype with all the features that we envisioned at one point. But everyone knows that's not always possible, so let's sum up with some open challenges. So we say that we aim for harmonizing and linking existing cultural databases, but the challenge that we have is that many of these databases, they are not sufficiently structured yet, and that's a precondition for linking them. But also for visualizing them. That's something I forgot, but that's very important also. So everything that we build upon is also relying on that. I think for the Age, we have got so many different disciplines. We have got different ways to work, as Gregor already pointed out. And I think that's why we also need this kind of dialogue and need to adapt to one another and develop shared aims and a shared understanding. I think the involvement of potential users is key, and there we also found that there are some situations, some users that just don't want to use digital tools. I think that's also something we have to be aware of. And a question I want to raise, we would like to get our tools more persistent, our findings beyond the project runtime. So have you got any ideas how we could go from this kind of scientific prototype to a wider community endeavor, how we could use that and prolong our findings? And that's it. I'm giving over to Sally for the second talk.